Energy Transition 91. COP28 coming home. Good morning, good afternoon, Tammy Nimitz, David Blackman, and Stuart Tully.
All of us on
Hello,
our
hi
own
everybody.
private jets, right?
Uh,
Flying in.
Stuart, I need your help. Please
Okay.
try to identify, is it David returning to Texas from Dubai last week?
Oh, yes. I think he was flying. I heard a rumor that he was. Yep, that's David. That's
that
David
would be
flying
David.
in. Yep,
Absolutely.
that's David.
Landing at Fort Worth Airport?
Oh, yeah.
Meacham Field, right there. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it is. David,
Oh,
great
my
job. You walked away from that landing, so good job, David.
I was actually the guy driving the white minivan in the road behind.
That's great. The initial proposal for the COP28 report was phase out fossil fuels. For me, it's unrealistic. At the end, they said transition away from fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. What's the meaning of transition away in the world of energy? Please, starting with Tammy, maybe.
Well, that's a good question. I think what's really interesting is that there was a lot of resistance to including anything about fossil fuels in that final text. And then they somehow roped Stephen Guilbeault, who is Canada's environment and climate change minister, to do the negotiating. And, he's a radical environmentalist, and he managed to shoehorn in there the mention of fossil fuels. And I know that a lot of people are saying, well, transitioning, it's not very much. And you have Al Gore throwing a hissy fit and all that kind of thing. But, I was watching what the environmentalists were saying, and they were saying that this is a crack. They needed to include fossil fuels in there. And as Bill McKibben said, maybe it was on the weekend, that this is now a weapon for the activists to hit the policymakers over the head that while fossil fuels are in that agreement, what are you doing to transition away from it? And you need to do more. And he said, this is a beautiful weapon for the activists going forward. And I agree with him. The fact that they even include it, it's no longer about emissions, right? Because before it was always, we got to keep the temperature down. We need to control emissions from whatever source they're originating from. But now it's specific. They're saying fossil fuels, we got to get rid of them, rather than, well, I thought we were worried about emissions. So what difference does it make if you can plant more trees or somehow use carbon capture, whatever? If you find whatever means in order to reduce the emissions profile of oil, gas, and coal, why can't you keep using it? But this says, nope, in the end, you have to stop using oil, gas, and coal, which, as you say, Armando, that's just unrealistic. But they're going to try.
Yep. Sure, David.
I think there's so much to talk about here. It's a great thing that this is an 8-hour webinar. And so one of the things that I thought was fantastic was the head exploding with Al Gore and Kerry. And I thought it was fantastic that it has opened up the conversation, Tammy. You were dead on right. But I also like the one word or two words they snuck in there that said reasonable. That's what they're upset about, is because all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute. And coupled with the failure of the ESG investing movement to not include natural gas, I think this is really going to cause two systemic problems from this. Tammy, you're going to see that directly. The people are going to try harder, and you're going to see the other governments putting out more money. They're going to see bailouts. We're going to see a lot more commitment to force the issue. You're then going to see the money coming around the corner to invest in natural gas. You're going to see that natural gas is actually not a bad thing. And then you're seeing Africa fighting more for their rights. and using these kind of things. So I think that we're about to go into a more violent discussion around the world because of COP28. A line in the sandbox, Tammy, like you talked about, is been put in line. And holy smokes, this is going to be the global Trump disorder syndrome that I have experienced in my own family, except it's going to be climate and natural gas and oil, and it's going to get ugly. And I'd like to just have a conversation with folks. This is about ending energy poverty in the least amount of damage to the environment. And let's talk in facts.
Well, I think what we saw at the end of the day is that the head of OPEC had it right when he wrote a letter to his member countries urging them not to agree to any agreement that talks about fossil fuels. And because exactly what Tammy said, this is the camel's nose under the tent, and people like Bill McKibben and Al Gore will use the language as a hammer to beat over the head of policymakers throughout the Western world. Now, China and India, countries in Africa are going to continue to do whatever they want to do in order to protect their own energy security, which is what they've been doing all along. But in the Western world, we are engaged, we are well along the process of unilateral energy security disarmament as a result of this global religion. And that's what it is. And the longer those people who understand all this shy away from talking about it in plain terms, the more ability the radicals are going to have to destroy our own energy security and render us dependent on China. So I've one of my New Year's resolutions is to stop mincing words about it all like I've done in the past. You know, I never say what's really on my mind on this podcast, and always kind of talk around these issues. And I'm going to stop doing that. And so, this is a global religion. None of this is realistic. We talk about it all the time. Wind and solar cannot displace these fossil fuels. It's just an enormous transfer of wealth that has pretty much nothing to do with protecting the environment anymore. And these people are bad people, and we need to start calling them out in plain terms.
Great point, Armando and Tammy and David. I want to interject this. My team is putting together the numbers for this podcast on all of it. And so your podcast, David, your podcast and our podcast is tried to been shut down by Google. On my news website, I can have 25,000 people on the site at one time, and Google Analytics will show 2. And I'm sitting there with my firewall. And if you don't have, as a thought leader like David, multiple channels out there, the podcast, the stories getting out there. And so, Armando, I recommend you get your own Substack for that very reason. And Tammy, you as well, so that it does make a difference. And you all have significant reach, unbelievable reach, and we'll be getting those reports out. So thank you for your industry leadership, all of you.
We have some comments. Let me share with you all.
We've been transitioning away from coal for 100 years. That's true, and we used more coal this year than we ever have before, and we're going to use more coal in 2024 than we used this year. So how's that transition going for us?
Yeah, I like
and
that
China
data you showed,
implementing-
Armando. A
Pardon?
few weeks ago, you showed a graph where it had all the different
Yep.
energy
Yep.
from like 1850, and it's like coal.
Well,
And did you see
growing
the
very fast?
in the the IEA report for coal for 2023? I have that report, and it is nuts. King coal is alive and well. So the hypocrisy of the IEA is quite cute. And I thought that was funny. When that report is absolutely a hoot. You guys got to read it.
That's right.
Never heard of the book
Domenico
titled
was saying that
Oil We Eat.
Great comment.
Yeah, and
And
it
natural gas.
depends on not just diesel fuel, but also on ammonia, which is produced from
Yeah.
natural gas, the nitrogen-based fertilizers. And
That's right.
we can't eat without oil and gas, and all this stuff, these alternatives, these lunatics are trying to force on everyone, will end up causing mass starvation. And of course, when you realize you have to understand that the Malthusian movement has really taken over the environmental movement in this world, and mass population reduction is actually one of the end goals of this global religion, and that's where we're all heading if we don't, start working hard to stop this all from moving forward.
Excellent comment.
Great. Well, welcome, Willie Maxwell. Thank you.
Untrue.
Uh,
Hi, Willie Max.
yeah.
Like that guitar.
Throw it in Portuguese. He's in the.
Yeah.
He's
Good.
connected.
Intro. I'm sorry. Intro.
Divine. Yep.
Did I see
No
UK
problem.
will impose a carbon tax on certain manufactured goods? Yes.
Yeah,
starting
but
in
that's part of
2026.
the EU carbon border
Yeah.
adjustment mechanism. So yeah, the UK has no choice really but to do something like that. Although the way that the bureaucracy operates in the UK, they're fully on board with all
Yeah.
the EU stuff. I mean, they've been dragging their feet on Brexit forever, and the UK had a real opportunity to, chart a different course. And all they've done is double down on the net zero stuff. They've walked back a little bit because of public pressure. But there was a poll out today that the public is divided on whether or not to continue down net zero. It's like, do you want to freeze? Do you want to have rolling blackouts? I mean, yeah. So
Yeah,
that the
that's
UK
all
thing is
happened under a conservative government, right? I mean,
exactly
just wait till you switch over to the liberal government. See how that
the
works
Labor
out
government.
for you.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
really bad. I mean, Keir Starmer was going around COP28 acting like he's the prime minister. He's having talks. He's explaining how it's going to be just this much better once the Labor Party gets in power. That's a little bit frightening. I thought you'd think that would be treason because they're not they're not elected yet, but they're acting like they are.
Yeah,
Armando,
that's Yep. Sure. Please. Please go ahead.
I would love to ask this question because I'm seeing a lot of frustration with the EU, and is there going to be more exits out of all of the thing because of this religion that's going on? Tammy and David, Armando, are we seeing a potential of other countries trying to get out of because of the COP28 and the religion going on? I would love
I
to
don't know.
hear your opinion on that. I don't know, but I think it's not good for the EU.
I don't know. The EU provides a lot of money to the various countries, whether they like it or not. And the only country that's really been pushing back is Hungary. And the other one that was pushing back was Poland. But even though the Conservative Party there, who had been in power for 8 years, has the most seats in their parliament, they lost the majority. And Donald Tusk, who used to be the president of the European Commission, formed a coalition with a bunch of the lefty groups, and he's now the president of Poland. So
Wow.
So, there was a really strong element there in Poland to push back and say, at least was a bit of a check on what the EU was doing. And now that voice is gone. And with
Wow.
Holland, I don't know. I think, we had this conversation before. I'm not sure that Geert Wilders will be able to form the government.
Yeah, they will pull out all stops to prevent that from happening.
To prevent that. Exactly. So, and the other countries learn that lesson, right? It's like, okay, if we push back, what will be the consequences? The UK,
Sure.
even though they were dragging their feet on stuff, they were really being punitive to the people. So to try and travel from the UK to the EU and live there and so on, they made it really, really difficult for people. So I really don't know. I don't know.
Let me share with you a comment from Beverly. Oh, thank
Hi,
you.
Beverly.
Great podcast.
Great comment, Beverly.
Yeah.
Thanks, Beverly.
Thank you.
Agree with every word of that. Yes.
Go to a very important point from my perspective. This is a report, 9-page report, summary of global climate action. Of course, we cannot see details here,
David,
but,
can I borrow your glasses?
yeah, but the point is using a word cloud generator. We can see the most common words used are not science, not technology, not energy density, not energy security, efficiency, all generic and political terms. David,
Right.
has science lost the game?
Oh, long ago.
Wow.
Yes. I mean, science doesn't really have anything to do with any of this anymore. This is a political, left-wing political insurgency. Yeah, and it really has always been. I mean, go back 30 years and go through the history, or really 35 years now, of this climate movement. Every solution that has been advanced by the climate alarm movement in the Western world has been socialist in nature. That's not an accident. That is the most consistent feature of all of this. It's been a left-wing political movement from the word go, and it continues to gain momentum. If Donald Trump, when he was elected for his first term, within 6 months pulled us out of the Paris Accords in the United States. And of course, the world went crazy. The media went nuts. The Democrats declared him to be the second coming of Satan, yada, yada, yada. But, if Donald Trump wins next year's elections, the first thing he needs to do is pull the United States out of this COP process. We need to stop sending any official representatives to COP meetings in the future, and the World Economic Forum meetings as well. Just pull us completely out. And countries that want to save themselves and their energy security in the Western world would need to follow that. Now, of course, what that means is that the Democrats here in the United States will do everything they need to do to ensure Trump doesn't win next year. But that's the only way any free country can have a hope of remaining free, is to completely extricate themselves from this process and stay there for the long term. And I just don't think that, honestly, I doubt there's the political will in this country to do that.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. One of the other issues that I thought was interesting coming out of the COP was this buildup over the past 9 months or so. The idea that the big circus has outlived its usefulness. And this was coming from groups out of the Club of Rome and some of the other really big European groups, and Mary Robinson's group, the Elders, they were going on about how what they really need to do is turn it into something like a permanent bureaucracy that meets on a regular basis to take the drama out, so then they can just continue on behind the scenes in a really kind of mundane way, controlling the world, really. And
right, one world government, yes.
Right. And so then you wouldn't have the spotlight that happens with COP and the hypocrisy, which is very much on display. But they want to turn it into this kind of ongoing thing that you wouldn't necessarily see the private jets flying in, because it would be going on all the time. And, it wouldn't be like this big conflagration where you have John Kerry's pilot competing with Al Gore's pilot for runway space or something. So my sense is that next year they will have another full COP or whatever, which is happening in Azerbaijan, by the way. And then they will have stronger language. So once they can actually say phase out fossil fuels, then they'll move to having this this more permanent bureaucracy. That's my prediction, which I hate doing, but I feel like that it's going in that direction.
Yes,
I think you're right.
Let me share Christopher.
Yes.
Comment. Poland is now run for a
Coalition
coalition
of
of center-left green. Yep.
The left and sustainability poll in 2050,
And,
really.
Luca. It
Luca
will be interesting to see what Wilders will do with the Groningen field, if he will toy with the idea of reopening it. I don't know what that is. What is that?
That's the largest natural gas field in Europe that
Oh,
was
okay,
that was
okay.
supplying Holland forever, and
Oh,
then there was some earthquakes offshore, and it hit some of the people in the northern province there, and everyone was flipping out. The activists got involved, and they shut down the field.
Of course they did.
and he is
So-
comparing with Milei in Argentina for the oil and gas.
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, well,
I
it,
think-
it really will be interesting to see what Malay does down there because Argentina has vast wealth in oil and gas resources that have, haven't been able to be tapped, and so that is a really strong point.
Wasn't it Norway
Not-
with those? Oh, sorry,
Sure.
Norway
please go ahead.
was it Norway that was shutting down all their natural gas, and then all of a sudden they've reopened some of theirs because they have, I believe, 8 connector points on theirs Xing out, or I can't remember which one it was, so I apologize. There's other
Well, that was
countries that are right there.
commercially motivated, yeah, because I mean,
Yep.
Putin's invasion of Ukraine and the blowing up of the pipelines created this big new market for Norway's natural gas. So naturally, the government decided,
Yeah, exactly.
hey, maybe we can produce that natural gas anyway.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
because it's a transition fuel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a transition. It's green.
Let's see, Star.
Great
Yes,
commentary. Oil and gas
Rod
companies
Gus,
must stop appeasing
Great
the
comment. Oil
alarmists.
and gas
Yes,
companies must stop.
no, they will never do that. And the reason
By
why is
claiming
that
a
the
major
management
corporate goal
teams
is to partner.
at the oil and gas companies, the big oil and gas companies, don't plan
Yeah.
to be in the oil and gas business 10 years from now. And so they have no vested interest in defending their industry. Their only vested interest is maximizing returns to their investors and, causing the least controversy possible with their public statements. And so, anyone thinking the oil and gas companies are going to adequately defend themselves in any of this, I have 40 years of experience to tell you why you're wrong. Sorry, you're going to
Yeah.
be disappointed.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with the industry, and we could probably do a whole episode on this, is there's a very marked difference between oil and gas companies where they're privately owned by people who built it, who built the company, who understand what it takes to get things off the ground and to do things. And then there's the big mega corporations where you have guys who went to management school. Maybe they kind of work their way in the industry, but they don't have the same skin in the game as the individuals who actually built things. So, yeah, I agree. I think there will always be this appeasement because it's about the investors. It's about the BlackRocks who hold shares and Little Engine #1 or whatever. Yeah. But what's interesting is Bill Maher had a really cool point, which I thought you could juxtapose Israel with oil and gas, where he was commenting about all this desire to have this negotiated settlement in the Middle East between Israel and the Palestinians. And he talked about all the different times that agreements had been put forward and the Palestinians said no. And then he said, it's really hard to negotiate with a group that doesn't think you should exist. And the problem is with the oil and gas companies, you're negotiating with people who don't want you to exist. So how is that working out? Over the past 30, 40 years, it's been these baby steps to the point now where they're saying, let's transition away from oil and gas. So you've had 40 years of appeasement and little baby steps along the way with these groups that want you dead.
But add one more point to that. What was the last point Maher made in that monologue? And it was an excellent monologue. Everyone should watch. Israel's not going anywhere. Right? The oil and gas
Yeah, that's
industry,
right. Yeah.
despite its refusal and failure to adequately defend itself, isn't going anywhere. It's going to be with us for a long, long time for one simple reason. We need it. It's the key to life. It's the key to our modern society. It's not going anywhere.
Exactly.
David. It's the comment of Hoffman. Yeah.
Exactly.
The
Thank you,
impacts
Justin.
of life
That's right,
daily.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Ronald
Stuart.
Stein. Oh, sorry. Ronald
Sorry.
Stein. Ronald Stein on your podcast and our podcasts on David's. When you sit back and take a look, I love what he said. try to make an iPhone out of a windmill.
Yeah, exactly.
I love what he's. Sorry, I'm going to give him a shout.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Armand,
Yeah,
we
no, no,
go to
no, you're
Robert
right,
Domenico.
Stuart. They make the difference from products and electricity. It's very interesting.
Exactly.
It's,
Robert Domenico at
But Stuart,
8:21 a.m. had a great comment. The most damaging CO2 is the breath of Kerry Gore et al. And so the reason I want to raise that is because there was a story Friday out of
The
somewhere
UK.
in Europe, the UK.
It was the UK. It
Researchers
was the
saying
university there.
that
Yeah.
that human breathing contributes 0.1% of man-caused CO2 emissions in the UK. But what's the point of that study?
Mhm.
It's to point at you. You are the problem. Your breathing is causing global warming. And that's just another manifestation of the Malthusians who are now running the environmental movement globally. Anyway, sorry. I just had to make that point.
Yeah, thanks,
no,
David. I
no,
think
that's great
Christopher
comment, as always.
has a little link to that in the comments there.
Yes, there is a comment, but
Christopher
Now
you
Wynn.
cannot
scientists
see
say
here.
breathing
Yeah.
is bad.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go. Yes, there you go. Absolutely. That was my absurdity of the day for Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Stuart, what this guy
Yes.
means when they said moment of truth?
I think
Which truth?
I saw that. I saw that, and I get tickled because moment of truth really should be the not the oil and gas, but the climate religionist. Is because the way the words were done, as Tammy has pointed out, that it is quite honestly the transition away, but the reasonable type language got snuck in. So the climate aware, the climate folks are picking and choosing some of those words that the president from the UAE put in there, that it's reasonable. That can be extended. So all of a sudden you sit back and kind of go, they haven't woken up to the realization what just happened at COP. And I think that the moment of justification, or the moment of truth, is actually a great awakening that is happening, and the great awakening on the religionist folks is going to hit home here fairly soon. Kind of like my earlier comment. They're going to be doing more violent things. They're going to be doing more violent policies. And it's because they're going to lose. Personal opinion.
Yeah, perfect. David, I know that your private jet's a very small one, but there were more than 400 private jets in Dubai, and each one using emitting CO2 a lot, 10 times more than per person. How do you see
Holy
this
moly.
hypocrisy? They are,
Well, it's just,
they are
of
lying.
course, John Kerry, though, we all need to remember John Kerry has never owned a private jet, right? That was his sworn testimony to Congress early this year. It was his wife's private jet that he was flying all over the world, and probably still is, and the media doesn't report on it anymore because they love his agenda. Al Gore, who's flying the private jets into Dubai? Who's flying into Dubai? Bill Gates, Al Gore.
Did you
John
see
Kerry,
the interview, David, with Bill
hypocrites in the
Gates?
world. No, I don't. I just can't stand it.
I threw up. I'm sorry.
Well,
It was fun.
I don't like throwing up. So
Well, I don't either. It was horrible. And Bill Gates, I just wish I'd hit his shoes, because he said, "I get to fly around because I'm important." Holy smokes, dude!
well, that was always John Kerry's line too, until he got called out about it by a congressional committee, and then all of a sudden, well, I've never owned a private jet. Well, of course you have. Of course you have, through marriage. The greatest amount of hypocrisy was the was the environment minister from England, right? Who was there in Dubai.
Yeah, I know. Oh my
And there
gosh.
was some important vote on Thursday or Friday of last week or week before last that he needed to get back to London. So he flies 7,000
vote.
miles on apparently a military jet, a UK military jet, to London to cast the vote, and then flies all the way back again
My back.
to Dubai to be there for the final negotiations. This is an
Yeah.
environmentally concerned minister.
Also, yeah, that's right. There's a comment from Patrick Divine.
Absolute control of energy for Western countries hinges on subduing the United States, but the Second Amendment is a barrier. Could the border invasion of young military-age males be a build-up to confront armed citizens? It certainly could be, and they've allowed now over 8 million, about 90% of whom are military-age males from all over the world, including thousands upon thousands from China, into our country since Joe Biden took office.
Patrick, you are
They
dead
also
on
use the
right.
voters.
Oh, yes.
Also,
Patrick,
they'll get a
here
phone and
with
get
us.
to vote.
Is anyone
See who's
astonished by
here
the
with us.
ignorance of
Run
climate
Finale
change
again.
activists who sit before Congress who are totally oblivious to the petrochemical derivatives found in every facet of our modern day lives? No, I'm not astonished at all because they don't care. I think they know it, but they don't care. They all show up with an iPhone as the prime example. You know,
You bet.
Yeah, and
Hey,
the water
back to
bottles.
Hey, back to
Tell me,
Patrick real quick. Oh, sorry. Back to Patrick.
Patrick.
There were last weekend. There were hundreds of Chinese individuals, military men. I've said this. Military men stand different. And as I was watching that, I saw all of these military men standing at parade rest or ready. Military men stand different. Those were military men coming across the border that we knew about. I'm interviewing several border security as it applies to energy. I'm going to put out to Patrick. China has over 30 interconnects in the U.S. grid system that they can control remotely. This is just as bad when you can consider how many military age men are in the U.S. trying to take down the country. And into your Second Amendment comment, the only way for them to take away the Second Amendment in the United States is through a treaty with the UN. And if that happens, they want to bring in another army to try to quell it. That is a conspiracy theory that's out there.
Stuart,
If I-
let me ask you. Sure, Tammy. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add in another development from the UN meeting that is probably gone overlooked. There is another new global climate finance center that was established at the COP28. It had, of course, Mark Carney, Larry Fink, the head of the World Bank, HSBC, a whole bunch of other of these different groups. And they're going to be apparently working on mobilizing private sector financing for the energy transition away from fossil fuels. So it's like another place where they can align money to be funneled into wind and solar and EVs or batteries or whatever. But I know, Stu, that you're of the opinion that ESG is on its way out. I think the terminology is on its way out, but I don't think the core principles of what they wish to accomplish
You bet.
are being diminished at all.
Can I respond as a debate, as a political debate, Tammy? Hey, and the fun thing about that is the oil and gas companies that are in the U.S. and Canada and those that are being responsible are policing themselves. And the ESG should not go away. I want to make sure I'm clear. We have to deliver the lowest kilowatt per hour and take care of the eliminate energy poverty while we're doing the oil and gas. and have the least amount of impact. So the ESG movement,
Yeah.
I think, should be market driven. I saw this article, Tammy, great pick. And I think that it is a part of the wealth transfer of them trying to get money out of these projects. I hope I'm right on that.
David, the US and China, they are the world's two biggest emitters, CO2 emitters. Are they satisfied or sad with COP28 results?
That's a great
China's
question.
happy.
I
China's
think
happy.
China's very happy because I mean, you read that agreement, it just says China just keep doing what it's doing, right?
And maybe get paid
that
for
it's
it
always
as part of the
been.
loss and damage.
Right. And they're classified as a developing nation, so they will benefit from these various funds that the U.S. will help fund. Just another part of our unilateral surrender. The United States, this current administration's probably fine with it. John Kerry got the biggest win when he somehow signed our country on to this thing about unabated coal plants, which he has no real authority to do on behalf of our country. And so, but whether our people will be satisfied with it, we'll find out in the long run when having access to electricity becomes a luxury item in the United States that's affordable only to about the top 10-15% of the population, which is, again, another of the ultimate goals of this global religion.
Yeah. And Tammy, this guy is happy or not with the results?
Well, I think he's actually happy with the results, but he has to put forward the idea that he's upset. Because if he's happy, then everybody else is like, wait a second, Al Gore's happy. It must be pretty bad for everybody. So, he puts on the shtick, like a little pantomime or something. Oh gosh, I'm so angry, I'm so upset. But I think in reality, he's actually quite happy with it because all of these financing things, his generation investment company will benefit. And
Yes.
he'll make even more billions than he already has.
Al,
Stuart,
Yes,
the President Sultan Al Jaber, he needs to change the position. He changed the position. What he needs to do?
he's already started, and I applaud him for his his discussions, because you could tell he was just having a good time. I mean, the UAE, and as the president, when you had Saudi Arabia show up and Saudi Aramco show up and all of the other big oil, in fact, we even had Toby Rice over there. And so I'm interviewing a few other folks that were there this next week. And it is an absolute hoot to see the difference from the oil companies. And as David has talked about, they got to stand up, and they're starting to. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So I enjoyed his sense of humor.
Okay, we cannot go to 8 hours podcast as Stuart suggested, but to the conclusions, I would like to propose the following, Dr. Tammy Nimet. Let me pick up here. Science does not follow speech. It's the opposite.
It's supposed to be.
Good conclusion.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be. You're right. It's not
Supposed to
right.
be.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah. Hey, Cap, before we go, can I just thank everyone for all these comments and questions? This was really, really valuable, and it's just always gratifying to know somebody's listening to these things.
Yes, David, and there are a lot of them. I'm only showing very fast.
No, this is great. This is
No,
fantastic.
several comments and great
Yeah.
comments, but we cannot put everything in the screen.
I saw
Thank
one
you
to
so
me,
much.
so I apologize.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you for the comments and
The-
questions. I love it. It's great.
Y'all have a great
Yeah,
week.
for sure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a happy Christmas.
great week for
Happy
you
Christmas,
too.
everybody.
Happy Christmas. Yes, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.